This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform to build a beautiful online presence. So as you may or may not know, I'm currently in the midst of a job search for my very first role as a product manager. And it's been, I think, 5 months since I started this process. So fingers crossed, hopefully I have some good news very soon. But all of these months did give me a lot of time to think and reflect and look back at the last time I was job hunting back in 2017, aka senior year of college. Now, back then I was looking for my very first full-time job as a software engineer. And to be honest, it was really scary. Job hunting is intimidating and it's stressful, and there's so much pressure to make the right decision. And frankly, I just had no idea what I was doing. And since I have been through this grueling process of tech recruiting yet another time, I thought I would share some of my insights for any of you out there who are searching for your first job out of college, or really just are at any stage of the job search process. So yeah, there's a lot to go over, so let's get into the video. Now, of course, when you're trying to find your first job, things like the industry and the mission and the product you'll be working on are super important, and we'll get to those in a second. But I think one thing I've realized, especially since college, is that probably the number one thing that matters the most above everything else when looking for a job is making sure that you'll be working with the right people. Because ultimately, think about it, day to day, you'll be working with the same team of 5 to 10 people every single day for 8 to 10 hours a day for at least a year. And I would say, especially as a new grad or someone early in your career, it's even more important to make sure that you join a team that will support you and that will help you grow both professionally and also personally. For me specifically, I think I really thrive in environments where I'm around people who inspire me to work harder and to push myself outside of my comfort zone. For example, back in freshman year of college, I had joined this neuroscience research lab at MIT, and I actually ended up staying at that lab for around 3 years, not just because of the work that we were doing, which was pretty interesting, but also because of the work ethic I was able to build there. And so every day when I walked into lab, I would just be so inspired by all the people around me who were so hardworking and just had so many different things going on. I remember one of my teammates was on the tennis team, so she had practice at like 6 a.m. and then in the evening she would come into lab and put in her like 20 hours a week. And then I had another teammate who, in addition to being a full-time student and working in the lab, also had a side job working in the cafeteria to help pay for their tuition. And even my lab mentor, who was a PhD, was the youngest member of her research group. And she not only did research in our lab, but also was doing another project in another lab. And she also got published within the time I was there, which is pretty impressive. And so being around all of these people who are doing so many amazing things really inspired me to always want to put my best foot forward. And so that summer, in addition to working in lab, I also took a physics class at Boston University in the mornings, and then in the evenings I would scoop ice cream at the local ice cream shop till 11 p.m. Looking back, I was pretty crazy to take on so many different things, but I think this experience really taught me the value of hard work and just how to manage my time without going completely crazy. Now, of course, your coworkers can inspire you professionally and in your career, but they also can just inspire you to start new hobbies or just go out of your comfort zone. For example, when I joined Freenome, I remember receiving a message to join the running club, which apparently we had. Now, I quickly ignored this message because I absolutely despised running and could never imagine doing it for fun. But then a couple of months later, I had become friends with a coworker who was really into running. She had run like half a dozen half marathons and had a whole cupboard in her house full of medals from these competitions. And I think just seeing her so passionate about running made me realize that maybe I can run too. And, fast forward a few months later, I actually ended up completing a half marathon. Now, it was at like a 2-hour, 20-minute pace, which is pretty slow, but still I was so proud of myself for actually completing it and not dying in the process. And even now, I still love running, and I think a lot of that was because I was so inspired by my coworker to pick up this new sport. Now, I'm a firm believer of the quote that goes something like, "You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." And in my life, this has held so true. There are so many hobbies and activities and even food interests that I have because I was inspired by a friend or a coworker. Now, you might be wondering, how do I do this? How do I get to know my team? I would say you can definitely ask some questions about, things a team does for fun or mentorship when you're interviewing. And even once you get your offer, you can always always ask your recruiter to set up some time with some team members or even your manager just to get a better sense of how the team functions and your role within the team. Now, one really helpful piece of advice that I got from my major advisor back in junior year of college was the importance of making a personal website when applying for tech jobs. Back in the day, I struggled for weeks to perfect my personal website, but one tool I wish I had used was Squarespace, which happens to be today's lovely sponsor. As someone who loves design but really sucks at CSS, I love how Squarespace has so many different template options that range from clean and minimal to bright and colorful. And whether you're a college student or a creator, Squarespace has so many different blogging tools to reach a broader audience. And once you publish your site, you'll have everything you need, from detailed analytics to SEO tools, to better see how you're doing, all from the Squarespace platform. So yeah, Squarespace really has it all. And if you haven't tried it out yet, head over to squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, head over to squarespace.com/harshibar for 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. And thank you again, Squarespace, for your continued support. Now back to the video. Now, of course, to give you the luxury of the choice to pick that perfect team, you'll have to have a couple of job offers lined up to choose from. Now, one of the biggest mistakes I would make every single time I was job hunting before was that I wouldn't keep applying for jobs. Now, for some context, back in 2017, when I was a senior in college, I had come back to school with my return offer from Amazon. But I was really interested in the startup world. And so I did a bunch of interviews during fall semester. And by December, I had a couple of different offers lined up with different startups. And one of those companies was Freenome, which is a startup working to basically cure cancer. Of course, this was right up my alley. And once I did get that offer from Freenome, I basically dropped everything else, said no to every other company, and just accepted the offer. Now, of course, I have no regrets about my decision to join Freenome. But I do wish that I just kept applying and interviewing, especially since I was already at final rounds with a lot of bigger companies. First, at the very least, I could use those other offers for negotiation, which I'll get to in a little bit. But even besides that, I think it's just good to always have a lot of options when you're making a really important decision. Because when you do have more options to choose from, then you can go to each company and really try to learn more about not just the company, but the specific team and project that you'll be working on. And oftentimes asking questions like the tech stack that you'll be working on or details about your project or even how the business is doing can really help you get a much better understanding for what this new role will really entail besides just the job description or the name of the company. Now the next point is to always negotiate, regardless of what stage of your career you're in. Now, Silicon Valley salaries are pretty competitive, so usually you can't really go wrong with your offer. But the thing is, usually that initial offer you get from a company is pretty much on the bottom end of the spectrum. So there is a lot of wiggle room to bump up that salary. In fact, I saw this visualization by Ramit Sethi, the author of I Will Teach You to Be Rich. And basically he showed that negotiating for even an extra $5,000 a year in your initial salary can make you up to $1.4 million by the time you retire. So yeah, negotiation is super important. Now, back in the day, I was not at all prepared for my negotiation talk. In fact, I think I was in New York City and I had just bought this super overpriced cappuccino. And when I got the call from the recruiter, I just walked into the nearest hotel lobby to take the call. I did absolutely no research before this call and just said yes to the very first number they told me. So yeah, don't do that. Instead, just remember that there is always room to negotiate. If you don't have any other offers, you always can pull up industry averages on sites like Levels.fyi or Glassdoor. You can even ask around and see if you have friends working at this company and ask how much money they're making and use that to negotiate. But if you do have other offers, definitely use them to your advantage. Now for me, I did have an Amazon offer, but it actually was a bit lower than the Freenome one. And because it was lower, I just took that at face value and didn't really use it to negotiate. But I realized because the Amazon offer was for Seattle, I could have actually used a cost of living calculator like this one to convert that 100K Seattle salary to a comparable 125K salary in San Francisco. And that could have definitely bumped up my salary by quite a bit. And in case it helps, I will link some resources down below of just things that I read to help me understand how to negotiate in the tech industry. And to be honest, I'm now 25 years old, but I'm still figuring things out. And I think the process of job hunting and just career stuff in general can be pretty scary, and I think it's very normal to feel overwhelmed in the process of finding your very first job. But if you are in the process of applying for jobs or maybe choosing between different job offers and have any questions, please let me know down below in the comments. I am not an expert in tech recruiting, but if I have some answers or can point you to some resources that might help, I definitely will. But otherwise, that is it for today's video. I hope that you liked it, and if you did, please give it a big like and subscribe. Follow me on social media if you want to. Thank you again, Squarespace, for sponsoring today's video, and I will see you in the next one. Kaput.